Hello and welcome to another edition of History After Hours podcast. My name is Kevin Pumphrey, and with me as usual is Mr. Jeremy Nixon and Mr. Ron Franklin. We are three history teachers from Lakeside High School in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and we are starting a new season, Season 6. This is our first episode. We are recording this on October the 1st, 2020. This episode, we talk a little bit about what it's like to teach in this new pandemic environment, a little bit of pros and cons, mostly cons, but we are adjusting to the situation. And then, of course, we dive into some of the crazy politics of the day, but we end on a happy note with a little bit about Halloween. So with that, we hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello, it is a new season, Season 6 of History After Hours podcast.
Welcome.
And it's October the 1st. And the reason it's been a while since we've recorded a podcast is we're drowning. Figuratively, of course.
How long can you tread water? Yeah.
So we're going to kick this off by talking about the school experience so far. What did we not see coming? What's it been like for each of us? We all obviously teach differently. I will have given us an appropriate intro at this so you'll know who's all talking. But so what are some things? Let's just talk. What are some things that have occurred so far in the first month and a half of school that you did not see coming?
It's only been a month and a half.
Oh, it feels like
it feels
almost a year.
Yeah. I think that's one of the, I'll just start right there. It's every day is so long, and yet you don't have enough time. And I mean, I get up here about 6:30 in the morning, and I work till sometimes 4 o'clock, and then I go home and spend about an hour, and then I'm back at it again until 11 or 12. And then the double teaching, that's been something hard to juggle. You know, you teach here, but then you go home and record things, or you post things, or you organize things, and it's just more. There's more hours to it now than there was before, and we were putting in quite a bit of hours before. You know, so that's
all three of us really care. We try to tweak things every year. We're trying to get better. But then, of course, the pandemic threw us a curveball, and we're having to completely adjust on, forced adjustment.
So, yeah, for people that don't know, each school has been allowed to sort of do this their own plan. There wasn't like central guidance from the state or the federal government. They said, okay, you're going to open, and you figure out what the best plan is and stay safe. And so what we've ended up doing is a kind of a hybrid model where there are some kids in the classroom and some kids who are online, and then some kids who go back and forth. And, so it's going to be a mixture every single day. I get about, most of my classes have somewhere around half, on any given day. I don't know, what are your numbers?
Yeah, mine are about half and half on any given day. But I mean, Mondays and Fridays are really sparse because they don't want to come Mondays and Fridays, but throughout the week, about half and half.
Yeah,
so trying to figure out how to make that equitable has been the biggest challenge too, because you don't want. I mean, no matter where kids have chosen to be, or maybe they're there because they haven't chosen, but somebody else chose for them, or maybe they've been quarantined. You want them to get the same experience, or at least something as close to it as you can deliver. And so we've all come up with different plans on how to try to get that done too. And that's been. I feel like I'm kind of in a groove now, but it's the sustainability aspect of it at this point. How long can I keep doing it to the level that I'm doing it without burning out? And I'm not trying to sound like some martyr, poor pitiful me, but at the same time, this is, and we do care. We do want it to go. We want it to be the best it can be, and so we're always racking our brains, and the three of us are always, bouncing ideas off each other and other folks in the building too. So, I don't know. It's amazing. It's the same, but it's different.
It's also starting to affect my classroom teaching because just mentally, I am so tired that I'll be in the middle of a thought or something that will normally come naturally to me, and especially in Gov, and I'll just blank. And it's sheer exhaustion, or I literally can't get the words out because I'm doing the same thing you are. I'm live teaching all day. I'm going home. I'm working, 2 or 3 4 more hours sometimes, and then on the weekends. So it's the question, I think you're right. The question is, how long can we feasibly keep it up without diminishing quality?
I think there's also something to be said about the expectation coming into the year, that we were either kind of under the expectation that it would all be virtual. We were kind of told that maybe the students would come in, they would get on laptops, and we would just do things virtually. Of course, that's not a lot of our styles. You know, we have students in the classroom, we want to teach them. So there's also a double pressure to teach the kids. And then, you know, that seems very acceptable now to teach the kids in the classroom. But people don't realize that when you teach the kids in the classroom, that time can't be done doing other things. You're teaching. So that means all the preparation, getting all that to the other kids at home is on your own time. And of course, our salaries didn't go up. Yet, you know, all three of us are veteran teachers. We know our content. You know, I would say we probably didn't spend too much time outside of class studying. I mean, we do it naturally because we love history, we love government, we love what we're teaching. But I would say I probably spent, on average, it depends on if I'm grading an essay, whatever, but 30 minutes to an hour outside of school per day, kind of getting ready for the next day or doing something. That's average throughout the week. And now, like you guys, it's 3 hours one night. It's 2 hours at minimum one night, because we're trying to make it fair for the kids at home. And like you said, you have some kids show up, some kids not. I think kids also are using this year as a great excuse to be less motivated and, well, this is different. I don't really have to do what I would normally do. So that makes it a little more difficult. I mean, it's just a struggle. You know, we're all adjusting here.
What about the slow response time between, you know, if you're trying to communicate with somebody, let's say that they didn't turn something in, you don't know why. Did they have trouble? Did they have technical issues? Did they have, you know, comprehension issues? Did they just have skill-based issues? And if you reach out to them and they don't reach back, or even if they do, but it's a couple of days later, you know, how do you? It's hard to help kids when the communication is that slow. Even if you respond within, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes, like the spontaneity of a conversation is lost. And so maybe it's not as, I don't know. That part is struggling. I'm struggling with that too. I feel like we've lost a step because we can't quite get to each other and have that, you know, the dynamic conversation. And that's part of the history classes and the poli-sci classes as well.
Well, what have they been teaching us for years?
To be able to discuss that out, I mean. Huh?
What they've been telling professionals like us for years is discussion-based. You want kids interacting, engaging in class.
Socratic.
And Socratic seminars. You know, so we, and me personally, I've designed my whole class around that live interaction. And then that's taken away, and now we're struggling to figure out a way to do some of that. And, you know, technology is great, but, you know, there's not many platforms that can emulate that, definitely right now. And, you know, we have a phrase that teachers always go to, results, not excuses. But this year, that's kind of out the window because there are some legitimate excuses.
Right.
And you know, I heard a kid say, well, why are they so picky with late work? I mean, this year of all years, we need to be able to have stuff turned in late. And, you know, I can see that side of things, but at the same time, it's a nightmare for us to set a due date and for kids to turn it in late, because then we have to filter through all that constantly.
You know, I think here's the other thing I think about from a student perspective, and I've had a few kids tell me this too that have been online or maybe have come up and they were online but now they're hybrid. All the different platforms they've had to learn this year, all the different teaching styles, not just on a regular year, you go into a classroom, you learn the teacher, you do the thing, and you get out and go. But now, if these kids are doing a lot of this on their own, and you may not actually even speak to that teacher. Not everybody's live teaching the way we are, or recording it and then posting that live session. How many different video platforms are there? How many different sites does the kid have to go to? How many different passwords do they have to learn now? How do you juggle all that together on a calendar and then be able to produce things back? I bet it's a nightmare on that end too. I'm not, you know, it's hard. That's all I know to say, I guess. But we're plowing through, you know, and we're hoping that it gets better every time we do it.
I mean, yeah, for me, assessments too. Like, how do you assess a kid's knowledge or skill level correctly. It used to be I would hear them discuss and debate, and we would write in class, and they would bring me stuff live, and I'd give it back to them. All that's out the window. And so it's like kids are at home, they can cheat. I mean, what is cheating, right? I don't even know what that means now. You can set up a timer, but there could be a glitch. All these are bad things. I know we're making it sound like it's the end of the world. And
I know some things that we use, you can actually lock that browser down where they can't browse to other sites, or they can only stay on that. Mm-hmm. But you have a phone, and I'm sure there's another device in the house somewhere. I can only lock that one device. They could look stuff
up. And
a
book in your lap. And
So how do we balance that out? Or am I assessing their ability to process information and then bring that back to me in some sort of credible way, showing that they've had insights and that they've or are we just judging how quickly they can look things up?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're going to treat this like a war. We're going to look. This is going to bring us all closer together. We're in the trenches together trying to do this. Maybe in retrospect, we'll look back and go, that was good. We made it through, and we got better at technology. I don't know, but right now, boy, it looks bleak. But we are all going through it. There's not, well, look.
What about the schools in the Northeast that are just now going back to, have you seen that?
Yes.
They go, school's about to start for a majority of kids around the country. And I'm like, we've been in a month and y'all are just now starting. And I know they've been pushed a couple of weeks.
Right.
But so what we were too, we were pushed at least 2 weeks, which tells me they weren't going to start until after Labor Day. Like, is that how we barely, we started at the beginning of August. I didn't realize there were that many schools around the country that still started after Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the governor, pretty much, or director of education?
It's state by state.
Yeah,
right?
It's state by state. States get to set their own school calendars, and it's geographic to a certain extent. We're still stuck in that. It's sort of like the whole daylight savings time mentality. We've been doing it this way for so long that we still do it this way. As far as when students return or when they don't, but to my knowledge, most of the Northeast and the West, it's usually after Labor Day. So they're just getting back into their...
Because we're in the South, we're trying to catch up somehow or get more time so that we can...
Yeah, well...
Is it political?
I think it's political
historically,
now.
Southern schools have been a step behind. Like, for instance, I know people who grew up here as kids and then maybe had some time where they had to go to the Northeast or whatever because of a family, job, move, whatever, you change schools. And they're teaching things there that we haven't even approached yet here, and maybe that's coming later in the year, but maybe it's not. And so is this an attempt for us to try to fix that from the past Southern schools? And I'm not trying to be stereotypical when I say this, but the idea is that have Southern schools been a step behind, and this is a chance to try to break that pattern? To have our school start a month earlier than everybody else's.
Well, this is what I've always been told, and I don't know how much truth there is to it, but the earlier start back for us in August was for the earlier dismissal back in May, so that when you had summer crops, that you had kids available to work in the South on the farms. I don't know how historically accurate that is, but that's what I've heard for years.
Yeah, that's how it all started. Even the most industrial part of the United States, in the North, that's where public education started, and even there, most people were farmers. So you had to schedule school around crops. So as soon as the crops were harvested, then we could have a date where everybody could go back to school.
Well, why do they still keep that schedule when we've bounced ours up?
I thought it was because of the pandemic they were waiting until...
No, I don't think on a normal year they start until after Labor Day.
Well, I don't know if when y'all were teaching, but it's been a while, but there was a big push early 2000s for year-round. Mm-hmm. And a lot of places were toying with having what year-round means is the same amount of time at school, just more frequent breaks and eliminating most of the summer, which technically could work for most families because we're not harvesting crops anymore.
Sure.
And so some states, like California, really went farther with that, and other states like us, we didn't. But I don't know how that.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. I'm just curious as to why there's a month's difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought, I mean, you got me. It also could be when, how much vacation time they have at Christmas and versus spring breaks and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, that's true too, right?
I just figured it was our resistance to ever change anything.
It could be that too. I've been arguing for year-round education, and every time I say that, people shudder. But, technically, I did a big research thing on the achievement gap. For disadvantaged kids, it happens in the summer. Mm-hmm. Kids with decent means and parents that care, they still get read to, they get to travel, they still get input, and then some kids sit all summer, do nothing. And that difference is incremental at first.
This year, some kids get to do that all year.
Yes. And what people at home don't realize, it would be easier for us as teachers if they would shut the school down and let us teach from home, or it'd be easier if they forced everybody to come to school and we taught from here, which might be very dangerous, but that would be easier is what I'm saying. We are in a situation
from a logistical standpoint,
sure,
right?
Yeah, it's just hard right now to do both, and I don't know. I want to ask y'all this question. We can end here as far as the school stuff because I know there's some political stuff we want to get into, but now that we have proven that homeschool virtual stuff is not only plausible, we can do it. It's it's not as good. You can debate the merits of the quality, but we can deliver instruction at home. Do we ever go back to compulsory attendance the way it was last year? You miss 10 days, they call the parents, they file fines on you. We throw fines at people who don't send their kids to school. But now, do we ever go back to a situation where that is we forced parents to send their kids to school?
I think so.
I do too.
I think that there'll be an element. I think at first we'll go back when the pandemic ends and the vaccine is, widely available, and people feel more confident and comfortable. I think that parents will want to send their kids back to school.
I think that's true for sure.
I think that a lot of kids will want to be back in the building too, but I think there'll be that niche group who that'll work really well for. Because I remember when we were in school, there were kids who needed to work. There were kids who needed to support their family or to raise money for that so that they could go on to whatever they were going to do next, or they had enough credits and they just didn't have to be here the whole day. So I know those kids still exist, obviously, and then you'll have kids who maybe they're a step ahead and they can do you'll do that for some sort of enhancement. They can handle that. There's a maturity level that would need to go along with that too. So I think that we can see it blended in, but I don't think that's. I think there's going to be you're going to have to do a lot of legwork ahead of time to make sure that that's for kids who can do it and do it well.
So that'll be the exception, not the rule.
I think so.
I think so too. And I also think there's going to be some sort of push for a return to normalcy in a way, because it's been going on for so long that, the more people I talk to, the more people I hear say, I just wish it were back to normal. And so I think that would be seen as a return to normal, right? Kids in school, the normal school day.
Don't you hate the phrase "the new normal"? That just crawls all over me.
Yeah,
it's because we're old.
Well, that's true.
Anyway.
Well, here's what I kind of think that there could be a process by which a kid in a special circumstance could stay at home.
Right.
My thing is I don't want to have to do double the work for two students.
So that's the other side of that too. I think there would have to be online instructors.
Yes. To handle all the online.
Who specialize in that type of delivery, and maybe old school people like us continue to do the Socratic method here in front of people.
What I think may happen, though, is it'll be something like we're expected to deliver to an online class one period and then an in-person next.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, swell.
I would love the technology for money to be spent. If it's going to be spent on whatever, I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff it could be spent on. I would love the technology in my classroom to film and audio where I don't change anything. I just upload what I did for the day each period, and where I don't have to Zoom, I don't have to push record. It's just some server that collects it and sends it out. I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon, but But once again, we all know that it's being at home, and especially in America, school is social. They're missing out a lot.
Well, okay, that was what I was going to do as I was rudely interrupting you. Teaching is not video conferencing. that's not the same thing. A video conference where you know, let's say some managerial team in a corporation where they think, well, that works just fine for our thing. We're disseminating information and people will go off and do their task, their specialized task involved in whatever they have to do for the company. Well, fantastic. That's basically, you could have done the same thing through email, but you'd like to see each other's faces, whatever. And maybe the conversation can happen if you're brainstorming to a degree. But when you are dealing with mounds of information I just don't see it being it's not the same process. It's not the same skill or set of skills. And I don't want to think I won't be good at it. Maybe other people really would be, but I know me and I just don't, I can't see that being my future in education. I'll do the best I can if that's what it comes down to, but I don't know. Someone would have to help me to learn that and to do it well.
Think about the best teachers you've ever had. It was probably a combination of their knowledge and their personality. It wasn't any kind of content that they delivered that you had to go research or even activities they made you do. It was probably what they knew, and you could ask them questions and how personable they were. And they're, you guys more than me, your personality drives your relationships with your students, their education. And when you're at home, you just don't get that, There's just something about being in person, and especially in America where school dominates the day. Kids are going to be in a weird place if they're at home 10th through 12th grade. I mean, that's just not a different thing.
People love sports analogies. Let's all have, our sporting events digital.
Right.
It's all virtual. We're all going to go, what do they call it? Is it esports? Yeah. It's all esports now. You're not really there. You
can call the plays virtually. And
a digital avatar of you is actually doing the work. You just sit behind a thing on a console and you do the thing, right? So that's. Are you getting as much out of it? Nope. No. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a score at the end, but it doesn't mean that you've actually accomplished anything.
Well, and I feel like the hybrid model is what's killing me on that, because the interactive things that I would normally do, even in a world history class, are stripped from me. And especially what we do in an AP government class. I can't do my survey,
the trials and stuff.
Yeah, like we can't do our political survey. I'm going to try to do our mock trial. I'm going to try to do our mock Congress, but that's going to all be a mix of digital and in person, and I don't even know what that's going to look like. So the interactivity between me and the students is just,
if you can get all the kids there that day.
True.
My wall
it's just
people,
gone.
I haven't done that. And some of the kids from last year, like, you're not doing the wall? Because that's one thing they could learn and know, and that's kind of something they enjoyed, because you're learning about a new person every day, and they didn't know half of them, and now they do. It's something quickly you can impress your friends with. And my kids this year, I can't figure out a way to do it justly, because they could just look it up real quick.
Right.
I don't know. Well, we can end the education argument gripe fest and much we're going through.
I think that we are doing well in spite of the circumstances, to try to end on some sort of positivity note.
Yes.
And partly because we've got great camaraderie amongst the staff here at the school. That helps a lot.
We're at a great school, and I've taught at several schools, and I've taught at several good schools. This school is a great school, and we're all learning together. And sometimes sometimes it's easier than other times, but I think we're going to end up being better at the end of all this. And look, we could all cash it in. Teaching can be a very rewarding job. It also can be a job where you can kind of lay low because of the hiring and firing practices. You can kind of do as little as possible. None of us are wired that way. That's why it's so stressful for us, because we still want to deliver a good education. And the good thing about Lakeside is most of our teachers, if not all of them, really care about the kids learning, and they're working really hard.
And just to give a nod to the admin too, I know that it's got to be difficult to try to coordinate all of this and all of us in the school. We're not a giant school, but we're not a tiny one either. And so with the different things that they've got to try to figure out, plus keep everybody safe and try new things, but then does it work, does it not? How do you roll that out? And even though we've had some things that we sort of came back against this year when we found out that they didn't work quite as planned, at the same time, they've been really good to kind of go, okay, we get it. Let's back up and see this again and try it. So I'll at least say that too.
And I want to give a nod to our coaches, that are teaching in the classroom, there's a lot of coaches who have 5 classes, academic classes they teach, and they don't get to go home and work on lesson plans because they're out on the field and they have 2 sports to coach.
Yeah.
I can't imagine games on Thursday nights and games on Tuesday, like what the coaches are having to deal with.
It makes me look like I got 48 hours in a day compared to what they have to do.
Yeah, and if they have a family, forget it. So so I want to give a nod to all the coaches that are because you once again as a coach you could cash it in the classroom, but we've got some great coaches that are trying their best in both venues and doing great. And I don't know how they do it, and that's why I quit years ago. Okay, let's talk some politics. We've got several ways we could go, but let's start with the most recent thing. This is October 1st. So a couple days ago, we had one of the most vigorous presidential debates from 2 people in their mid-70s.
That is not an adjective I've heard applied to that before. But
the debate was vigorous. I think, look, if I know anything, it's history. American history specifically, I don't know much, but if I know something, I would call that the worst, on any metric you want to use, the worst presidential debate, one-on-one. We've had some crazy ones when you have primaries, but as far as the general election, that is the worst one.
It was straight up trash.
It was. History. Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. To call it a debate, I think is incorrect. Like, I don't know what I would call it, but it wasn't a debate.
Okay. Is there, because you are the political science guy, is there a debate that comes close to being what we just saw?
Not that I can think of.
The same level of just spite and contentiousness and
not that I'm aware of. Not that I've ever seen
arguing with the moderator.
Well, I mean, there's been some arguing with the moderator in years past, but to that extent,
okay,
never.
Let me jump in and just say my second, third, and fourth place would probably be 2016.
Oh, well, yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
There you go. Yeah.
There's a common denominator. I don't know if you all these debates.
What could that be?
The chaos factor.
I'm not a math guy, but I think I could figure that. Okay.
Well, and at least on the Democratic side, the strategy for handling it was very different from 2016, because her strategy was, okay, sort of push back, but then go forward with my policy and delve into what I want to do. And for whatever reason, that wasn't received well. It was received as, somber or dour or, for, like I said, for whatever reason, but
presidential,
possibly. Yeah. I think, that's a good word for it.
Or traditional.
Traditional is a good word for it. I think that Hillary Clinton tried to debate in a traditional manner with a non-traditional opponent. That's, I think, a nice way to say that.
That was courteous.
Yeah, I thought so. I'm kind of proud of that. And then this year, tradition just wasn't present. And I will say that Biden tried at times to bring it back to a normal presidential debate.
Don't you think that when he looked at the camera and tried to go heart to heart, that was the most effective thing he could do and did accomplish?
Those were the most effective moments all night, when he just ignored Trump, looked straight at the camera, and talked to the people. Those were the most effective moments of the night.
But even those moments were brief, though.
Yeah, they were few and far between, and that's why, I don't put much stock in polls afterward, but looking at it, there were a significant number of people who said that no one won that debate, and that's the reason why, because there was no debate. There was just sniping.
Yeah, you don't win that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, of the 3, Trump was the instigator, constantly interrupting.
Right.
Biden interrupted too, but he only had 2 options: either sit there quietly and not interrupt and let Trump run over him, or interrupt back. And a lot of people, because Biden interrupted back, and because he had some personal attacks too, saying he's the worst president in history, and he had some personal attacks, because Biden went back at him, they're trying to make them both equal.
Right.
And I'm like, well, they're not both equal because they didn't both instigate it. I think it could have, like, if you had Biden debating Pence, you would have had a much different tone.
But there would have been people who, if he hadn't sniped back a little bit, would have gone, well, That's what's wrong with the Democrats. They just lay down and take it.
That's true.
Right? I mean, so that
Doesn't have a spine.
Kind of in a no-win situation with
Yeah,
that.
Biden was in a no-win situation there. But at the end of the day, at that debate, I really think Biden came out looking better, but I don't know that it moves the needle at all for anybody.
No, I don't either.
No.
And once again, we're kind of policy heads. You know, we're one of the few Americans. We're part of that group that really wants to hear some of that substance. But I have to keep in mind that most Americans aren't like that. They like the drama. They like the attacking. They like, a lot of them
listening
came
to some
away.
of the kids who came in the next day, that was all that they were concerned about.
They like the entertainment.
And even if they didn't
entertainment.
watch it, they had heard people who did, or there was some sort of thing online about it, and they were like, "Oh, do you see the?" I was like, "It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be It's not supposed to be like Worldwide Wrestling or whatever. It's not supposed to be that."
Well, in AP Gov, literally the day of the debate, I taught what the party system is supposed to do. The parties are supposed to inform the voter. The parties are supposed to give their positions on major issues, and the parties are supposed to then let the people make an informed decision about the choice they're facing. And
Did you see any of that?
No, and here's the thing: they had an assignment where they were looking for that, and my Google Classroom blew up because they were like, "I can't do this assignment." Yes, because we apparently can't have a presidential debate.
But you know what? They were learning something,
Well, that's true.
so they knew what they were supposed to be looking for and how this wasn't it.
And by the way, our students, when this happened in 2016, were in like what, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. Mm-hmm. They don't know much else than what this is. So they're not expecting any real decorum and etiquette. And
I really hadn't thought about that. Some kids don't know. We are teaching some kids now who don't remember a president, not truly paid attention to. They probably remember the name, but didn't truly pay attention to. The same way when I was a kid, I didn't really know who Richard Nixon was or Johnson. You know what I mean?
Well,
I didn't
I'll
really
be honest,
know that.
I didn't pay that much attention to Obama or W, not like I am now. It's even adults are, even a history teacher like me, I'm paying a lot more attention to politics, and my students certainly are.
Who's the first president you really, really, really got? Because I'm older than y'all, so I'm
late Reagan. President Reagan, I remember that being a thing when I was like 10,
I actually remember the Watergate hearings as a little. I remember being a kid being mad because they were interrupting a cartoon show I wanted to watch.
Hey.
But I remember that. I'm like, what is this? My mom would say, well, that's they're Watergate. And I'm like, what the hell is Watergate? I'm like 6.
Right.
Well, my first really political memory, I was homesick from school one day. My great-grandparents were teaching me, and it was the Anita Hill testimony.
Oh, nice.
And it was on TV, and that's
Clarence
the
Thomas?
first thing. Yes, Clarence Thomas confirmation, Anita Hill. And that was my first real political memory.
So you're asking Grandma about
No, I came home and asked my mom, and
pubic
she
hairs on
about
Coke
died.
cans.
She about died.
Mine was Oliver North. It's so funny because that was interrupting everything on TV.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was like, who
Iran
is
Contra.
this guy?
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's what's interrupting TV. what's
Yeah,
interrupting our cartoons.
What is? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember the oil embargoes under. Now I'm drawing the blank because it's late in the day. I'm tired. I remember Ford, but I also remember Carter. Yeah. So and I remember why I remember that is because I remember seeing the gas lines. I remember seeing the signs, "We are out of gas," and people being mad about that. And I remember as I got a little older, I can then recall how the car styles changed based on the fact that we had to go through this oil crisis. I guess we didn't have to, but we did go through that, And
so you remember Watergate and all through this?
yeah, I remember Vietnam a little bit.
Where were you when Kennedy was assassinated? Was you wearing an I like Ike button?
That's my earliest memories are, again, because a kid it didn't mean much to you, but I remember the words.
Right.
I remember them talking about the Vietnam conflict, and I remember them talking about Watergate, more about Watergate. And then, like I said, Carter administration, I really understood that. I remember when Ford got shot.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when Reagan got shot.
I remember when Bush had a shoe thrown at him.
I remember. Oh yeah, the double shoes. Yeah, that was. Dude showed some good reflexes there.
And he had the wit to gather himself, go down for the other shoe. That's pretty hardcore.
But yeah, that's. Where were you guys when the shock and awe attack on Iraq came for the first Gulf War?
Well, I was really young. I mean, I wasn't really young, but I was probably, 13, 14 years old. But I do remember watching that on TV, seeing our smart bombs and watching the actual bullets and thinking, wow, I've never seen that before. And I've never seen it since, by the way, because they don't show it anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could see it.
Where were you?
I was a kid, but I remember we were in the living room around the TV watching it.
I was in college.
I think I was like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you guys a question. And here's the question. Give me the best argument for the Republicans not being hypocrites with this Supreme Court pick. Give me strong man, steel man, Mitch McConnell's argument. Now, Lindsey Graham there's no way to defend him because of what he said blatantly. But Mitch McConnell, usually I think in 2016, he always kind of had the caveat of the majority party versus the president of the opposite party. So, Steelman made the best argument against them being hypocritical here.
Do you want the BS flowery argument, or do you want a straight, just right up answer?
Well, I want the best argument. If you had to defend Mitch McConnell in court and your life depended on it, what would you say?
Say politics is ruthless. Win elections.
So you're going Machiavelli.
Yeah, I am.
See, the best argument is the one they ignored in 2016, and it is the Constitution. That the president has the ability to appoint Supreme Court justices, and the Senate shall consider them. So he's doing his constitutional duty, and the Senate has a constitutional duty to consider them.
But if you're talking about hypocrisy, they didn't do that for Merrick Garland.
But that's the problem. You're right. Yeah. So there's no good way to defend them, honestly.
There's no hypocrisy if you don't have a moral compass.
Sure.
Right, and I get it. Power by any means.
Win at all costs. I mean, if that's your end game, then this is completely rational and reasonable.
I mean, to me, it's indefensible, honestly.
Oh, I think so too. I'm saying if that's
right. There's no defense to the hypocrisy. I mean, there's definitely a constitutional duty to act, and they're right about that. They just didn't do it when they were supposed to. Mm-hmm. And the other argument that really infuriates me about this is we've never confirmed justices in an election year. Well, that's also crap. 1988, it's Justice Kennedy. He's confirmed by a Democratic Senate. And so there goes your argument there, buddy, because Democrats, opposing party, have confirmed a justice in an election year. So, look, it should have happened for Merrick Garland.
This episode isn't actually the hypocrisy. It was the time before.
Yes.
So the Merrick Garland thing
is
the hypocrisy.
Yep, the Merrick Garland thing is the hypocrisy.
Gotcha.
Yep.
What's her name, the new Supreme Court justice that Trump is?
Oh, Amy
Barrett.
Barrett.
Barrett. She's on tape 4 years ago saying that Scalia was a conservative and should be replaced by another conservative.
Oh, yes.
And, so there's another kind of hypocritical, should she accept this appointment?
Do you know much about her record on the bench?
On the bench, no, because she's not sat on it for long. She's an appellate court judge. She was named by Trump in 2017, so she's been around on the Court of Appeals for only a few years.
Oh, I see.
And she's coming out of Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. She's a Pence.
She's a Pence person.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
and that's where the religious ties into it.
Do you think part of this? I don't know if y'all heard Romney say that. Hey, well, our country is center right overall, and we should have a court that reflects center right values.
Well, okay,
that's what the court does now.
Romney's country maybe, but the actual America.
Yeah, and he said America as a whole is more center right.
I don't buy that.
We should reflect. So I don't know what he meant by that. Maybe he means conservative. Maybe he means Christian. Maybe he means
geographic spacing, because there's a lot of Middle America.
Maybe geographic
square miles. But that does not equal population.
So do you think how much of this is the Republicans, because they can look at the country, know the majority is Democrats or they support liberal values or whatever, and this is their last shot before, the tide is going liberal, and it has been for a decade or two, ever since, I guess, Gingrich kind of changed things in the 90s a little bit, but ever since W, for sure, things are becoming a little bit more democratic, or the Democratic Party, do they see the end and this is their last thing, to shape the court because they'll never get this chance again? Like, if they really did what they said and they waited to the election, are they worried that it'll be a missed opportunity they'll never get back?
So this is like the damn the torpedoes moment?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, ideologically and demographically, it's pretty clear that there's a movement toward the left in America. And the easiest way to blunt that is Supreme Court appointments, because the court is already center-right. I don't know what Mitt Romney is talking about. The court is center-right. More right than center, I would argue. Mm-hmm. And so replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg with... the anti-Ruth Bader Ginsburg isn't going to be moving to the center right. It's going to move it to the far right.
Yeah.
So I think that's just political nonsense. I think he's talking to talk.
So we're just seeing from the Republican leaders in the Senate just ruthless politics.
Yes.
Who cares what we've said in the past? Sure. It's now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if you look at it, the only ones speaking out against it are Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins of Maine, who said,
but
wait.
they always speak out against everything, and then they just fall right in line.
But
are they speaking out?
It seems like a gimmick.
Because of their constituents?
Well, Susan Collins is in real danger of being defeated in November.
So she has to show a little bit.
She's trailing. Last poll I saw, she was trailing. So she's got to show a little bit of independence, or she's going to lose her seat.
What about Graham?
Oh,
is he going to go out?
The polls are close. So depending on which pollster, and some of them are not as reliable as others, and I really need to go in and look at the crosstabs. But I've seen a poll where they're tied, and I've seen a poll where Graham is up by 2, which would be margin of error. I would think it would have to be, for Lindsey Graham to go, I think it would have to be a Joe Biden electoral landslide. I mean, I think he'd have to win 8 or 9 points, and he'd have to have coattails for miles. Do I think that's possible? Yeah. Do I think it's probable? No. But they're putting the chance of the Democrats taking the Senate at 65%, 67% right now.
The Electoral College, which me and my students will be talking about some next week, and we every time we kind of revisit this thing, I looked up. One senator from California represents nearly 1 million people. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it is. Is it?
Well, not a representative from California, not
a single representative
from California. Whereas one from, say, like a Montana will be closer to probably 300,000 to 400,000 people.
That seems unfair.
Well,
if you talk about everybody being citizens and having equal representation.
I've heard, and I can't think of who said this on some show I watched, and he was like, "Why are there 2 Dakotas? Each Dakota gets 2 senators.
Yeah,
there's like 4 people in the states combined.
How can you?
And
could
they
you do that?
And they get the same Senate representation. Well, actually, more Senate representation than the millions of people who live in California.
Could you do that? Yes.
Think about California. It could be split into 3 states easily. Of course, Texas could too. And
yeah, what the Constitution says about that is it has to be approved by the state and also approved by Congress, because you can't take existing land from one state to create another without consent of all and of the national government. So
I teach a little bit of that in the Articles of Confederation and some of the stuff that they.
It's just weird to me that seems equal.
Well, and the Electoral College.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Of course, the Electoral College was designed to do that very thing, is to kind of limit the voice of the majority and to let state electors.
Well, since you brought that up, is it time for that to go then? I hear people bringing that up all the time.
I just not long ago listened to a debate over this very thing, and I ended up going, I can see both sides. It depends on how much you think it matters that you're from Arkansas or California, or if you value that your area of the country is fundamentally different than another area of the country, and you want to maintain your area's values and morals then you would support. Arkansas would lose.
Well, isn't there like a coalition of 11 or 12 states right now that are like defying the whole idea about no matter what their state does, that they'll do it a different way? Isn't there some sort of banding? Have you heard this?
Yeah, well, I think this is what you're talking about. There's a national popular vote movement where some states are passing a law saying that, and they'll bind their electors to vote for the national popular vote winner, despite whether
That's
they
what I'm
win or
talking
lose
about.
their
Yeah,
state.
I didn't know how to articulate it, but
So the catch on that is the legislation that they're all passing has a provision that says that it won't go. They don't agree to it until there's enough states that support it to where it would be an electoral college victory. And so they're not giving up the right unless enough states sign on.
Would it rather be better to go that way or the rank voting?
I think ranked choice voting would be interesting. Maine is trying it out on a statewide level, so I hear for the first time.
I don't know what that is.
So ranked choice voting is the idea that when you go to vote, you don't vote for one person, you rank them in order of your vote. So,
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the person, let's say if I'll use people actually running. So like say if I wanted to vote for Joe Jorgensen and then I wanted to vote for Donald Trump and then I wanted to vote for Joe Biden, I would rank them 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. So if Joe Jorgensen doesn't win a majority, which not going to, then that vote is taken off and they go to my second vote, and then that would be a vote for Trump. So it would help third parties tremendously.
Third parties would immediately get a boost, and maybe a big boost.
The argument against it is that unless you had the third party established in all 50 states, that all it would do is create an electoral college spoiler. Because if in a tight election, if one state went third party,
you could call it the Nader rule.
Yeah, good. But if one state went third party and nobody got to 270 on the electoral vote, then the House of Representatives picks the president.
Who was I can't even think to 2016 now. So much crap has happened between then and now. Who was the spoiler in that election?
Jill Stein.
Stein.
Yeah.
What was the other guy? Gary Johnson?
Yes.
Johnson.
And
yes.
William
yes.
Weld.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Okay, we could keep going down this road, but let's transfer to something very scary. Look, with all Trump's bluster and stuff, that's one thing, and what people say and what he tweets, all that stuff kind of goes in one ear out the other. By this point, it's a lot of just political show. However, peaceful transfer of power. He refused when they asked him point blank, will you make sure that no matter the election results, there'll be a peaceful transfer of power? So the first scary thing is he didn't say that. He said, we're going to wait and see. Okay, now I get it. That's what he always says because he wants it to be like a celebrity show. Let's stay tuned. I get that. Right. But then the second thing he said right after that, which scared me, was if the election's rigged because of all the mail-in ballots, and he said if it's properly done, then there won't be a transfer of power. There'll be a continuation, which in layman's terms means is
I'm only going to accept it if I win.
Yes, the election's only fair if I win. Both of those
or stand back and stand by.
Good.
Both of those things together scare me, and we could talk about the horrible possibilities. But I want you to give me your best case scenario, given who Trump is, his narcissism and whatnot. We've talked about. Not even, and I'm not saying that politically. I'm just saying, we know who Trump is.
Best case scenario?
What is the best case scenario for the country? First of all, here, let me set this up a little better. He's not going to be gracious. He's not going to say, congratulations, Biden, you won fair and square. Okay, that's off the table.
Why would you even say that that's not a possibility?
Okay. Because that would be normal. That's what every other president's done.
Leave a plate of cookies and a note on the table. On the Resolute desk, welcome, Joe.
So we have horrible possibilities.
Sad, but they used to kind of do that. They used to leave a note on the Resolute desk, welcome. Oh, man, that kills me.
Good old days. And look, we could talk about maybe like John Adams leaving in midnight and sulking away, or some of the other ones that were not so friendly. But let's just, what is the best case scenario, in your opinion, right now? Elections in a month. Best case. Yeah, and let me give you the winner. Biden wins, not a landslide, but a decent win. 290, something like that.
Yeah, I think if Biden wins convincingly, best case scenario is Trump makes his fuss, but the Republican Party says get out, essentially. Now, I think that's best case scenario. I don't know that would happen because the Republican Party has changed so dramatically in the last 5 years. Yeah, I mean, look, either way, whoever wins, best case scenario is a landslide victory that can't be contested.
Right.
But if short of that, it's got to be convincing enough that the majority of the people feel confident in the legitimacy of the election. And that's something we've been talking about in comparative government. The idea that legitimacy grounds all of it. We believe in the institution. We believe in the peaceful transfer of power. And if it's clear that the vast majority of the country not only values that, but wants that, whether it's going peacefully or forcefully, it'll happen.
I never thought that in my entire life that I would think that we were comparable to developing countries around the world whose dictatorial leaders say crap like this, and then they do contest it, and they do say, oh, it was rigged, and they won't step down, and they then stay there for another 40 freaking years until there's a major coup d'etat and a revolution to finally oust them. Of course, he's being 73. He's not going to last another 40 years, even if this does go down that way. But I really never comprehended the possibility, and yet here it is. It's the same pattern. If you don't believe it, go look up countries that have had a lack of transition in the last, say, half a century, and listen to the rhetoric that they've thrown out there. Those leaders, it's the same crap. It's the same thing. Oh, we can't trust that election, so I'm still the guy. If we can have a best case scenario for me, aneurysm.
For yourself. Lights out. The teaching doesn't matter. The world goes dark. I had a good run.
Well, I've been telling my kids giant meteor 2020.
Yeah, there is supposed to be an asteroid impact on election day. It's supposed to be the size of a refrigerator.
Is it actually going to be giant meteor?
Well, there was one that just missed us.
Jesus.
But Neil deGrasse Tyson was interviewed like 2-3 days ago, and on November 2nd, is that the election? November 2nd?
Third is
Third.
the election.
There's supposed to be an asteroid
Second,
that hits.
third. Who gives a crap now at this point?
It's only the size of a refrigerator. It'll hit the Earth. You will see a good meteor shower, but that's all. So
Okay.
we're praying for a bigger one, but okay. Now,
is that the positive news we're going to go out on?
no, I've got another quick disaster.
Okay.
Which is worse publicly? In public, as far as potential violence in the streets. Biden barely wins. Trump barely wins.
Biden barely wins.
Yeah.
I mean, because look, the statement from the debate about stand back, stand by, and that's why I say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go out with something a little lighthearted for a few minutes. Let's talk about Halloween. My wife she brought decorations, and she bought some, and then she's getting some out, and she comes in there to me and says, "Are you ready?" And she wants to flash a skeleton on our garage door. I'm like, "No." In my family, we barely decorated for Christmas. And that's my mom begging my dad for 2 straight weeks to put the Christmas tree up. And then if we had lights, it was one thing around the front window. And that's, once again, that's probably a day before Christmas and torn down the next day. So I don't come from a family of decorations. My wife does. And she's just excited. Let's do this. So what's y'all's Halloween, when you were kids, what was it like?
It wasn't ever a really huge deal. I grew up in Bismarck, and we were way out. So trick-or-treating wasn't, it was a thing, but it wasn't a big thing. We would only go to family and a few neighbors that we knew. So we got dressed up and, we got a little candy, but that was about it. It wasn't a big to-do for us. So I don't
Favorite costume? Do you have a favorite costume?
Oh goodness, I don't even remember. Isn't that sad?
Yeah.
I couldn't.
We've been teaching this year.
I couldn't think of one I wore.
Yeah.
What about you? I'm coming back. Keep thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Franklin?
When I was a kid, we grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of kids who were about the same age. And so the trick-or-treating thing was huge. There was a ton of us. Everybody had their lights on, and everybody had their decorations outside because they knew the kids would be coming by. And it was just this. And sometimes we'd all travel just in a group. There'd be pods of people going. And so that was fun. But I'm trying to think. We didn't really decorate inside for Halloween. We did some stuff out in the yard. And, maybe some spooky lights or something. But I tell you what, I actually enjoyed Halloween more as an adult with kids because we would start throwing parties we never had a Halloween party when I was a kid. We just went trick or treating. That was it, you know. And then of course I'm old enough where I remember the razor blades and the apples and the Tylenol scares. And everybody here in Hot Springs, they offered, the hospitals here offered to have people bring their candy to the emergency room, and they would X-ray your candy to make sure it was safe. That was a thing.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a big deal. Anyway, but when I had kids, we started having Halloween parties because where I live now, there aren't any other kids their age, and so we would just bring a bunch of people to the house, and we got a pretty good sized yard. We just spread out, and you know, if the weather was bad, we'd go into a garage or whatever. But we always had music and lights, and I mean, really went full tilt, and even the adults dressed up. And
what about this year? Y'all doing a big?
No. Both my kids are grown now.
Hazmat suits.
It's sort of it's sort of transferred over to them to have start the traditions.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So.
We didn't do much. I remember my mom, passing out candy, but we were kind of like you. We lived in the middle of a farm. Mm-hmm. People didn't really drive. My mom would drive me around to different places that she knew. But back then, like the churches didn't do a big thing. Mm-hmm. It was either you just go into different houses. And I remember the homemade candy that people would give us. It's like, oh, that's going to taste like crap. I'm looking for Snickers. I'm looking for Butterfinger.
Got an orange.
I always hated the popcorn balls. I'm like, I don't want that.
The popcorn balls. Yeah. That's pretty lame.
The little tiny candy. Yeah. I wanted full-size candy.
Yeah.
Candy bar. You're looking for candy bars.
I want to. Yeah, and of course it's kind of what Easter egg is. It's really the greed of kids.
Sure.
We want to gather Easter eggs.
The only holiday in America that outsells from a consumer standpoint is Christmas.
That's crazy.
American spends the second most amount of money spent on a holiday is for.
Yeah, isn't that funny though? The kids they look so much forward to Christmas because they're getting presents. Mm-hmm. They love Halloween because they get to dress up and they get candy, and it's a competition. Like how much candy did you get? And even Easter, my kids love Easter because they're going Easter egg competition, and there's candy or money in them, and they're hey, you got my egg. It's funny how it just shows you the primal greed we've created these holidays around.
But we'd have bonfires, and we even got to the point where we were bringing out screens and projectors, and we were doing like all kinds of like hors d'oeuvres and things, and people would sit out around the fire and watch the movies, and we'd stay up late.
That's awesome.
Scary music playing everywhere, just a little pot. It was a big deal.
Favorite costume? Did you have one?
I always like being a pirate.
Pirate,
yeah. I don't know.
You?
I still can't really remember. I remember that He-Man was a big thing when I was really little, and so I think
He-Man
that was
or Skeletor.
He-Man, yeah. I mean, now probably Skeletor. Or I'm just going to get the big plague mask this year and wear it.
Yeah, there you go.
It's my mask for school.
Yeah, we're all going as. For me, Freddy Krueger.
Oh, yeah.
And the only reason is because it was huge. I wasn't even old enough to see it. My parents wouldn't let me watch it. But at my house, we had to milk twice a day, every day, no matter holiday or anything. So there was no forward thinking, right? It's just every day what we got to do. So my costume had to be something I could put together, fashion. We're not buying any costumes. Yeah. So I got gloves and I poked nails through it.
That's awesome.
My grandfather's fedora. I didn't have a shirt anything like he did. I got my mom's makeup and put mascara and I thought my face was burnt. But it was pretty good. It wasn't bad of all the homemade costumes that I had to put together. Usually the ghost or the
scariest movie for
as
you.
a kid, Howling, one of the Howling movies. I was way too young, and I walked in. My brother and sister are a lot older than me, and I walked in from the hallway and watched it, and it scarred me. I was like, "What is that?" And so I think as a kid, as an adult, I went to see in the movie theater Blair Witch, not knowing anything about it.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that it's fake, and you think, because they
thought
say
it was real, they promoted it.
They
like
found
it was,
this recording, and I'm like, "What is this? What did we watch? I thought this was supposed to be good."
Yeah. That's mine. Because I went to the movie thinking it was real too. We were in high school, and because
heard it was good. I'm gonna go see it.
Yeah. And so that was.
It was billed as like a documentary kind of thing.
Yeah, it was, which is ridiculous. I mean, looking back on it,
doesn't
how
it
stupid.
still hold the record for like the greatest gross I mean,
Profit.
because it only took
because it was
like
made
$10
for
to
nothing.
make it or
Yeah,
something,
it was made
and
for
then
nothing.
they made
Can
millions.
quarter and
I also really liked the original Scream, not so much the sequels. But
Oh, yeah.
I liked the original Scream quite a bit because I was
I thought it was
like
just
16, 17 then.
there's a difference between scary and horror and disturbing. When they were stabbing each other at the end,
Yeah.
that was kind of disturbing to me.
Yeah.
But Saving Private Ryan,
Oh,
when
wow.
he's jamming that knife in the bell tower,
that's rough,
that's
yeah.
disturbing.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
So,
Well, but it's funny because I look back on movies that scared me as a kid, and you're like, and I don't know if it's just because
Yeah.
I'm older or because now we're jaded as a society, but there's kids that, and I don't know what's wrong with people. There are little kids who've seen, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all those what are those movies where they're chopping everybody up? The Saw movies.
Yeah.
They're like, it's great fun. What have we done as a society with home video? I don't know.
I wasn't allowed to watch.
No,
Yeah.
But I remember being scared. We had back when home box office was a brand new kind of thing in our lives. I remember when cable became available. Again, the guy who remembers Vietnam. As a child, I wasn't there, but I remember
War is hell.
My parents were watching Halloween, the original Halloween. And I remember I was kind of like you, kind of peek. I walked in and I was like, that scared the crap out of me. I didn't actually finish watching it till I was older.
well, back then, parents could not only could they say you shouldn't watch it, but they could keep you from watching movies.
Oh yeah, actively.
Now it's the information's everywhere, and kids, if they really want to see something, watch something, they
You've
can
got a
just
phone.
figure it out. Yeah.
Everything's on the phone.
Yeah, until I was 11, we had 3 channels. I mean,
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
it. So they could very much control what I watched.
Yeah, on one side of our neighborhood, if you live down in the little valley part, you got 2.5 channels. 4, 7, and sometimes 11, depending on the cloud cover.
Yeah, I remember when Channel 16 Fox started. I was like, we have a 4th channel. I was so excited. That's so sad.
I'll tell you what else I remember, since we're talking about like agedness. I remember when MTV debuted.
When they had music.
Oh, yeah.
Back when they played music on music television. Yeah.
I used to go to my grandparents' house when I was probably 6 or 7, and we would love to watch MTV because we didn't have cable, 1, at our house, and then 2, music videos. We thought that was just the best thing ever.
Yeah.
What a different time.
All the good old days.
Yeah.
I did see a super scary movie just the other day. I turned it on, and there was all these people wearing masks. And then 2 80, 70, 8-year-olds were yelling at each other. You couldn't understand what they were saying. And, it was chaos. And I was scared to death. And then I realized that is the pandemic and our presidential. Okay, guys. That is the podcast for October 1st. We are History After Hours. See you next time.